Okay then, so the Overwatch League transfers keep trickling in a very, very slow pace now. It's actually one a day. Today we are hopping over to the Paris Eternal, because the Paris Eternal obviously have been through their financial difficulties in this off-season. It's seen them get rid of their entire Korean/French roster that did actually pretty well last season. A lot of it has been shipped off to a lovely place in Texas called Dallas, and, well, it's been a rough time for Paris fans. It's been a rough time for Avala, who has been in charge of this whole operation, being promoted to general manager most recently, and she's been handling everything for the Paris Eternal. And I think she deserves a very big round of applause, really, because she's been probably the person with the most pressure in the entire league during this last season, and she's handled it absolutely fantastically. So I think she really deserves a lot of credit for what she's doing at the Paris Eternal. Paris Eternal might not be the best team next season, it might not be a top 10 team, but it's still amazing that they even have a roster, to be quite honest with you, with how strapped for cash and how little Paris and Avala have had to work with. Anyway, we have seen the Paris Eternal sign many players. We saw them sign actually a bunch of 6. A little bit back along, like this was over a week ago now. So they brought in Khan, the German support. They brought in Tsuna, the Spanish support, who was originally with the Guangzhou Charge, and before that as well, he's been on other teams. Then they brought in Dan, the Dutch main tank, Ellie Vogt, the Swedish off tank, who we've seen at the Washington Justice before. The Norwegian DPS player Onigod, he was at the Dallas Fuel last season, albeit briefly. And then the Danish DPS player Naga, who is a part of the Bay Alliance, and a really, really good DPS player, like crazy good. So those are great pickups for the Paris Eternal. A 6-man roster does not get you anywhere in the Overwatch League because it does not meet the rules. You must have at least 7 registered in the Overwatch League to not basically incur the wrath of John Spector. And that's the rules for every single team. So if they've got less than 7 players right now, they are going to sign someone because they have to. They don't have a choice. And if you're London Spitfire, yeah, sign someone. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll find out soon. Going back to Paris Eternal though, their 7th player has been announced. It was announced yesterday, and I'm sure the French fans will be very happy that it is a little bit of French influence in this very European roster that is lacking any French influence so far. This is Tsuna, the DPS player. So, Tsuna was at the Vancouver Titans last year. He came in after the explosion of the runaway roster, and Tsuna had a storied history in EU contenders mainly. He was at Eternal Academy, and then he was at the British Hurricane before that. In fact, he was at Hurricane when they did okay in Europe. Nothing too major, not the Hurricane we're seeing right now anyway, that is doing so well. And then before that, Young and Beautiful he was at. So back in his days in contenders, I just actually amalgamated days and contenders. Days. That's interesting. Back in his days in contenders, Tsuna was actually a good player. He wasn't, shall we say, massively fantastic and groundbreaking, but he was a good player in his contenders days, Tsuna, especially when he was up against, when he was playing for British Hurricane up against the likes of Team Giganti and people like that. Tsuna was not a bad player. However, obviously he came into the Vancouver Titans last year, and he kind of got benched, didn't he? Let's be honest. He didn't really have the opportunity, or he did have the opportunity, but it was mainly Dalton and Shockwave that were playing for the Vancouver Titans. Shockwave was really good, hence the fact that he has had the opportunity to move on and go to the Philadelphia Fusion, which he has definitely snapped up, quite obviously. Then that leaves Tsuna. He was benched a lot of the time on that roster, and that leaves us in this position now where Paris Eternal have signed him up. I would assume that Tsuna had no interest in any other teams in the league, because basically, no offense to Paris Eternal, if there was any other interest from any other team in the league, then I'm assuming they would have gone to the other team, because Paris Eternal is not in a great state right now, whichever way you paint it. Although I don't think this roster is atrocious, I think it's still pretty low in terms of rankings in the league. Tsuna, I don't see him starting. I think Tsuna will be a bench player once again, even at the Paris Eternal. When you look at the DPS line of Naga and Onigod, that's got to be your Paris Eternal starters for the DPS. Naga has been so good for Obey Alliance, and Onigod is a great hit scan player. I really think that. He didn't get the chance to shine on the Dallas Fuel last year. The reason being, Dallas Fuel were a flipping mess. They were an absolute ridiculous mess. Half their players weren't even playing Overwatch. They were playing Valorant. So, yeah, it was not exactly the best environment to show your best sides. Let's put it that way. So, I think it will be a better opportunity for Onigod to demonstrate his skill at the Paris Eternal. And Naga, I really think will be good. I think he deserves a shot. He could be a shockwave type player, Naga, which would be very interesting. I've never thought Elivote is bad. I think he was given a bad hand at the Justice. Dan, I have worries about. Neptuno, yeah, he's a good leadership figure. Khan, I have my worries about, and then we also have Tsuna, who I don't think will be starting over the DPS players. Now, the other DPS players on the Paris Eternal. Now, it'll be interesting. It will certainly be interesting to see how this roster works out. Avala did confirm, apparently, that this is the end of the signings for the Paris Eternal. It doesn't surprise me. They are going to go with a bargain basement roster. They're going to go with the least amount of players that they can get. That's going to be 7. So, your final roster for the Paris Eternal is Tsuna, Khan, Neptuno, Dan, Elivote, Onigod, and Naga. And interesting fact about this Paris Eternal side is the fact that they have one player from different countries. Like, there's no doubled countries here. So, Tsuna is from France, Khan is from Germany, Neptuno is from Spain, Dan is from the Netherlands, Elivote is from Sweden, Onigod is from Norway, and Naga is from Denmark. So they are all different countries, which I think is really unique and really cool. It does increase representation in the league as well, which is always a good thing. I think, is Naga the first Danish representation since the Fran? Possibly? No, Shockwave. I'm talking rubbish. Ignore me. One thing we do have to clear up, obviously, is the active organization right now for the Paris Eternal. Currently, it's just, their owner and Avala, who is general manager. They need some coaching, and that will be interesting to see what happens. I'm sure maybe that Avala is keeping her eyes on the Gauntlet. The Gauntlet is not too far from finishing, and there are some coaches that were players in the Overwatch League that are making a slight name for themselves in the North American region. So it's possible that she might look at them. But we will remain to see what happens there. Coaching is something that can be very easily fixed. You can get ex-players, you've got a lot of different options, and there'll be a ton of coaches in the contenders scene that will be very, very willing to step up for the Paris Eternal and be their coaching staff for 2021. I'm not expecting, obviously, anyone groundbreaking to come in and say, hey, we're going to do this and that, and we're going to turn this into a massively great side. But it is looking... I don't think it's as bad for the Paris Eternal as it possibly could have been. I was really worried when all the financial trouble stuff started to come out. I think this is about as good as it could have got. They picked up some really nice European talent from Obey Alliance, and they picked up some Overwatch League experience with Onigod, Elivote, and Tsuna. So, and Neptuno, I shouldn't forget. And you got Neptuno, who's a really old head and a really good guiding head for the people who just have no Overwatch League experience, like Khan, like Dan, like Naga. Onigod only has limited experience, and so does Tsuna and Elivote. So Neptuno will be a really good guiding head for that side. They're not going to be a groundbreaking side. We're not expecting that. It'll be interesting to see what the Spitfire come up with, because the London Spitfire are obviously rumoured to be bringing up British Hurricane. British Hurricane have been rivals to Obey Alliance. British Hurricane have generally been on top. In Europe, we have a lot of Obey Alliance influence in this Paris Eternal side. So, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Also, you've got Tsuna, who's an ex-Hurricane player. So, there's a lot of things that... there's a really nice European rivalry, potentially, here, that I think will be great for the season. And even if both teams don't do enormously well, which is a distinct possibility, like European-based teams don't tend to do all that well, hence the fact they don't really exist in the league. And so if it does go south in that way, you do still have that bit of competitiveness for the European region between the two teams that now have purely European representation, or we're expecting it for the London Spitfire anyway. But I think this is an okay move for the Paris Eternal, and I think it is as good as it's going to get for Paris right now. And this is a case of, well, let's not expect too much, let's go into the season, let's see what happens, and then hopefully in 2022 things get better, and we can see about perhaps increasing the roster and getting it back to where it was in 2020, which was not a bad place. But I am going to leave it here for this one. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.